Thank you. Thank you very much. I understand that I have an hour and a half, and for students who've had me in class, if you give me an hour and a half, I'll take an hour and a half. So if you need to get up during my presentation, please feel free to just leave, okay? My topic is human trafficking in Ghana, a country's disgrace. And that same title would apply to not just Ghana, but anywhere it's taking place. So not to put Ghana down, I'm putting down all countries that allow it to happen, so to speak, in terms of it being a very disgraceful way to live life. You know, when the Hebrews were enslaved by the Egyptians, that was horrible and terrible. When the Africans were enslaved and colonized by all of Europe, that was awful. And what's going on now is equally awful as well. So thank you for the opportunity, Shari, a good friend of mine, to come and talk about a passion we both share, getting rid of human trafficking throughout the world, whether it's in the form of sex trafficking or labor trafficking. Either way is awful. I think as society, when we think about labor trafficking, we think, oh, sex trafficking is bad. The reality is labor trafficking is even more widespread than sex trafficking, and they both take place throughout the world on a large scale. So I'm going to go ahead with the agenda. Is the light okay for you all? The lighting okay? Kind of give you an idea of what I'm going to talk about, where it's Ghana, social justice, a little bit about some numbers out there about trafficking in Ghana, the Ghana Human Trafficking Act, talk a little bit about Ghana prostitution, human trafficking, the way the country sees it. And of course I have my own take on what it is and how it looks. I'm going to try to be culturally competent and respectful of the way the culture also sees it and views it, view it. And of course I always love to lead my presentations with, what can you do? We can talk about it all day long, all month, all year, but at the end of the day, what can you do about it? And the truth is, all of us can do something. And being informed is the first step to doing something about human trafficking. Well, I'm going to give you a background how I ended up in this kind of research. Never intended to do research on human trafficking or women in prostitution at all. Actually, I've always wanted to do research and have done research on alcohol and other drugs. But if you're familiar with prostitution research in particular, there's a lot of connection between drug use and prostitution and human trafficking. Whether one led to the other or resulted in it, there seems to be a pretty clear connection and correlation between the two in the data out there. And so when I lived in New York, it was a huge problem of prostitutes loitering throughout this very nice neighborhood, and the community did not appreciate it. And because it was a very nice neighborhood, the city took a very strong stand against prostitution and ended up coming to the university and asking us to be a part of some research on getting rid of prostitution. And so we did this large, massive project interviewing women and men in the streets, interviewing the Johns who were actually arrested for trying to pick up prostitutes. And by the way, they all denied it. They were just good Samaritans. Wow, the world would be a better place if there were so many more good Samaritans out there. The truth is they were really perpetrators, trying to get off the hook as usual. And we also interviewed residents about their take on prostitution. And as a result of being part of that project, I got really interested in why and how so many people end up in trafficking and prostitution. In the early 90s, we hardly used the word human trafficking. That's a new politically correct word that a lot of folks love to use and espouse to show their support in favor of dismantling it. That is still up for debate, how serious we are as a country in trying to eradicate human trafficking. But it at least got me very interested in a very important and serious issue. So when I came here, I continued to work. And I'm being so naive and optimistic, I really thought it would just be okay is to go out in the streets and find these women and interview them. I really thought that the pimps really were not a problem in this country, or in this part of the state, I should say, or this part of the country. I know it's more popular in some of the larger states. Didn't really think it was a problem here. I know that as I started to do my own research independently, I was quickly advised by Vice and here in Columbus that that is not wise. You need to look after yourself and watch your back. Because not only are you possibly dealing with pimps, but maybe even traffickers, and that can be very dangerous. You're interfering with their money. And so they came on board and actually escorted me around the city to do my data collection with women, only women this time, caught in prostitution, as well as a program that Mary Haven had set up. And my latest entree into international research started about 5 years ago. I went to Ghana for the first time with a study abroad of 14 students here from Ohio State. And before I got there, I took a whole class on Ghana, Africa, learning the culture. And no one warned me there would be a lot of interracial dating in Ghana. So imagine my surprise when I got there and I saw all these white men with African women in the hotels only or nice restaurants. I was a little slow, but I figured it out. I figured it out. There weren't just dates. This was truly trafficking and prostitution going on. And when I started, we stayed in about 5 hotels during that trip. And when I started to ask them, what is this about, what's going on? They say, oh, it's a huge part of our economy, having foreigners, tourists come in, use these hotels, and have a little fun on the side. And that's how I found out about how widespread it was. And one thing that I was also told, that if you do not want your visa confiscated, you don't want to be locked up abroad, you need not touch this category, this topic, because the government is clearly a part of it, and to some degree on a large scale. So it's probably not a wise research endeavor. And if you look in the material online, magazines, articles, you will find very little empirical research on trafficking in Ghana. And that's for a reason. And that is for a reason. And I'll tell you about the last piece here, the fishermen. I did interview some fishermen this past summer, some fishermen in terms of trafficking. And a lot of folks kind of like, why are you talking about fishermen and trafficking? Well, in Ghana, that's one of the main sources in terms of victims are people who are forced to be part of the fishing industry. And most times, those individuals are children. And what Ghana has forgotten, interestingly, is if the children are in it, they aren't going to school, they're doing until they turn 18, what happens at age 18? Do they all of a sudden become educated and get great jobs? No, those children are now men, and they're still stuck in an industry that looks like slavery. So I investigated this, the whole phenomenon of fishermen still feeling like or being treated as slaves. And I went out to interview 200 fishermen, and I had to actually stop interviewing 222 because I had so much response of men wanting to talk. And the results show that fishermen feel like slaves. They feel like slaves, and according to the way the country defines it, probably are still considered to be slaves, which is a very interesting thing. And although the country heavily depends on fishermen in terms of their foods, one of the gravest insults I found in Ghana was to be called a fisherman. If you call someone a fisherman, get ready to fight. That was a grave insult, which goes to show the lack of respect the country has for these men who I feel are victims of human trafficking. So that's where I'm kind of am today. But I also would kind of give you some examples of things I actually saw regarding sex trafficking in Ghana that is live and well. Okay, and feel free also to ask questions as I go throughout. Yes?
So what you're saying is that the government is involved heavily in the trafficking going on there because it's affecting their economy in a positive way?
In fact, most governments are involved actually. Yes, I am saying that. Absolutely. I am definitely asserting that. And you know, even well-meaning governments can be bystanders and therefore contribute to the problem. And considering our resources here in the United States and the power and authority that we have, if we really want to squash this here as well as abroad, we really could. But it doesn't really benefit us economically to do so. And there are many perpetrators right here in the United States who continues to get off the hook, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that. So it's really a major problem. All right, well, where in the world is Ghana? How many of you have had a chance to travel to Africa yet? You're from Nigeria, doesn't count. You were born here. And you're from Sierra Leone. Anyone else been to Africa yet? Okay, yeah, so let me kind of tell you where it is. You can kind of see a cloudy picture of it. Let me show you another example of where it is in terms of the United States, Canada on top, and then right there, United States, and to our right, Africa. And the little small nation there is Ghana. And that's where I went for, I've been there now 7 times. And you think about how large this continent is and how close the countries are. In fact, you can literally walk over the borders of some of the countries, you very well know. And you can see how this could be a ripe situation for human trafficking because of the proximity of the countries. All right, so that's where Ghana is. Well, I have to always talk about social justice and human trafficking because clearly human trafficking and all these different forms of slavery are violations of human rights across the country, especially regarding women and children. And of course, men too are victims, but primarily when we think about human trafficking, especially sex trafficking, we're talking about mainly women and children for very obvious reasons. So there's no justice in human trafficking at all. There's no justice. Just want to revisit that definition again, talking about everybody having the same basic rights. And when you're actually a victim of human trafficking, your rights are denied, period. I know that many of us probably could not fathom, for example, having sex with someone we just said no to. Because no means no. Although rapes are still real in this country, we can't fathom this being part of our life in general, and that's what sex trafficking looks like. Violations on an ongoing basis. Even think about it just in a very concrete kind of way when it comes to human trafficking. Not only are you being violated repeatedly, by people who probably have befriended you in the very beginning, but you have no way out. Not only is this happening to you, you can't run to the police, you can't run to anyone. This is it. A lot of folks get in it and they're staying until they die, get very, very sick, or they're no longer usable items in terms of being disposable. So this is a lot of folks' lot in life when it comes to human trafficking, with very little supports officially in place to help people exit it. So the premise, and I always say to people, just because it is done this way doesn't make it right. Just because something has always been done this way doesn't make it right. Even when you think about Ohio, and Ohio being a very agricultural state, can you imagine this being a ripe state, for example, for labor trafficking? You think it happens in Ohio? It still does, absolutely, in lots of different ways. And I always say, because it's always been done this way. When you think about some of the menial jobs that have to be done, the truth is, someone has to pick the tomato, the grape, the fruit, the cotton, whatever it is, someone has to pick these things up. And so I can understand someone doing menial jobs. The problem occurs, however, when there are just no rights or options to get out of these menial jobs because they're being forced to do it. Under the, believe it or not, the supervision of people who have authority to stop it actually, but it isn't happening. Talks about slavery. This young man right here is a very popular young man in Ghana. They actually call him the little Barack Obama. Do you see any similarities there? And he's such a cute young man too. I mean, in fact, he was one of the only kids that were able to actually meet the president when he was there a couple of years ago. And I always think about kids like this here because we have to put a face on human trafficking. We don't think about kids who have potential to do so much more. We just kind of think about numbers. But these are real people here and abroad, people like you and I that somehow got into it. No one wakes up, says to their mom, their loved ones, their role models, I want to be a prostitute, I want to be a slave. You don't aspire to do those kind of things. They happen. They happen. And despite people's incredible potential, it is robbed of them through human trafficking, which is stunning to believe it happens still in 2012. Well, why talk about it? Let me give you a context of how many people I'm talking about here. In Ghana alone, in terms of the capital city, porters, people who run errands. You see little kids working in Ghana, carrying things and doing things that most of us cannot do in an 8-hour day. It is incredible, the stamina, the physical abilities of kids to work in Ghana. I find this shocking. There were many times I saw kids pick up things and lift it over their shoulders, put it on their heads, that I could not literally pick up at all. And they did it all day long. Amazing, 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 amazing. So in the capital alone of Accra, 30,000 children are believed to be working as porters, pretty much doing whatever needs to be done for other people around them. That is quite a few. And this is just one city, the capital city. And in general, the capital cities tend to get more publicity, but it happens even in the smaller cities where there's not the cameras and the media to talk about it. And the thing about Ghana too is the whole lake, the whole Volta Lake, where it has been documented of kids being trafficked. Do you have any idea what these kids may do in terms of the fishing industry? What kind of tasks do you think they assign children in the fishing industry? We think of fishing as a little sport, a hobby, kind of go out with the fishing hook out there, you pick up the fish, you take it home. What kind of tasks do you think kids are assigned to do? Well, yes?
Possibly cutting up the fish when it comes in, like handling the safety, like handling all these like knives and stuff like that.
They do some of that. They do some of the cutting. A lot of that is reserved for the women. That's the women's work once they get the fish. Before they actually get all that fish, and while they're trying to get the fish, what do you envision kids doing? Little hands, little people. Well, yes, you know.
I don't know, like maybe going into like more dangerous areas where only someone who's really small can fit into.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If the fish net gets caught under the boat, they have to get out the little boat, the little rickety boats, and climb up under there in the water and unhook the fish hooks from off the rocks, off a piece of trash, or if the fish net gets torn, they may have to try to pull the fish to a certain spot of the net until they can pull it back on the boat. They need little hands off unlatched caught nets, and nets get caught all the time. And keep in mind, these kids are not formally trained to swim, so many of them drown trying to do this. They kind of learn as they go how to swim. And they're in these large bodies of waters, constantly, as divers, going under, unlatching fish nets. Hands get cut, they get stung by little animals in the water, they get bit, they get hit, they get injured. Lots of injuries taking place with these kids, untrained kids. Some more thoughts. Ghana is considered to be a source, transit, and destination country. In other words, victims come from Ghana, they take them to Ghana, and victims travel between the countries, including Ghana as a place of transportation, going through transit, going through the country. And so Ghana is a very popular place to be, one of the most developing or developed countries in that part of West Africa. So highly desirable. Oh, which is really nice though. Ghana is one of the few countries that have actually legislation. In fact, we got our legislation in 2000. Theirs came on board just 5 years later, making it a felony. It's always been around, but they're trying to do something to say if you're actually caught, and like in the United States, people are rarely caught and convicted. You know, it's easy to be caught doing things in this country and abroad, but conviction is a whole nother thing, as you all very well know. And then thousands of victims are bonded to slavery in Ghana. Thousands and thousands and thousands. Well, some more reasons. Talking about young girls. Let me show you a picture here. I want to show you the picture. Is she here? Okay, I'll show you next in a minute here about these young girls. In Ghana, this has been outlawed. Trokoski customs, where the girls marry older men as their brides. Child brides are illegal. They do not allow them and trying to outlaw them in parts of Ghana, but they're still real. They're actually girls who are sold to and born into slavery forever based on their family sins or debts. And they marry this man, these men have to do whatever these men want from them and of them forever. 7 to 17 are the age range, and there are some of the countries that are known for trafficking to and through Ghana: Cote d'Ivoire, Togo, the Gambia, Nigeria, Guinea. Talking about working as laborers, workers, divers, street hawkers. Do you know what a street hawker is? The people that sell things on the street. And you know, you may see some street hawking maybe in New York City, some of the bigger cities, Chicago maybe LA, some street hawking. It is commonplace to see street hawking all the time. And most times when you see street hawkers in the United States, they're not at risk of being hit or run down. It is much more common to see kids getting hit and even killed sometimes as street hawkers in Ghana. They have to run between cars and buses. If someone stops at a light to buy something, and the light turns green, the car's gonna pull off and expect the child to run behind the car. And they do, all the time. It is stunning to watch it. And they may have a big pan on their hand of water or fruit or items, and they're running with this big pan on their heads behind a car that's moving in tight traffic. You know, our lanes are pretty wide and pretty clear in this country. Not so much in many parts of Africa, especially Ghana, in terms of the traffic being very tight. So very dangerous work here. Any questions so far? One thing, you know, I've been asked or challenged on is being culturally competent. And when you're a researcher and you from a different country and you try to go abroad, you try to think about the way they may see things around them, the way the country operates. I know that when I challenged some adults in Ghana about what I was observing kids in labor, they would say, no, you're mixing culture. You're mixing up culture with trafficking. There's a difference. And you're mixing up culture with children contributing to families. And there is a difference. But I tell you, it's a really fine line in terms of how families actually operate, even when there's a desperate means to provide for everybody around. Okay, in terms of trafficking, this is pretty clear. If a family member sells or leases a kid, that's a problem. And actually it happens. This happens in many developing countries where parents actually sell their kids, you know, for a very minimal amount to you and I, but for them it's an incredible amount of money. So that happens as well. Leasing or even giving away. Sometimes parents may give kids away knowing they will be doing this. With the expectation, however, they will send some money back when they earn some of that money. They'll send some of it back. And these are some committed folks, and they will send it back if they get any of it. They will send some back. And it's okay if kids are working in family members, because I noticed in Ghana, I find a lot of kids live with other families. I don't always know who's related to who, because there's so many kids typically around. And that's okay if everyone is working. It seems to be more problematic for me when I observe things if just 1 or 2 kids do all of the work for long periods of time, and the only compensation they get is having somewhere to sleep and maybe being able to go to school. Maybe. That's when the lines become very blurred for me in terms of what I think is helping out a relative or someone's child in trafficking and labor abuses. All right, I say it's pretty clear. I always say human trafficking is one thing, cultural norms is another thing, and they're different and they're not synonymous. And when I went to Ghana just this past summer with a student to do a project on this here, I actually interviewed lots of high schoolers and asked them about child labor in that country. And overwhelmingly, the kids said it's too much. Kids are expected to do way too much here. And parents are very harsh how they talk to kids on a regular basis, and it's downright abusive. Parents need to find a better way to talk to kids because they misinterpret if there's some good intentions behind statements, and modeling socialization is lost in the patterns of communication. So the words are definitely not interchangeable at all. But keep in mind, if you were to travel abroad, be very respectful of culture, but yet keep, true to why you're there. I want to talk a little bit about policy. Do you know why we as social workers need to learn about policy? First of all, how many of you love policy classes? Wonderful. Just two people. That's not so wonderful at all. Why is it absolutely essential that social workers get behind the pen and the computer in developing policies? Yes. Is it Casey? No. Crystal, I'm sorry, yes.
Just because all these policies affect our clients and the work that we do, like if we find out a policy is like in direct opposition of us being able to help a client, we can't really
Absolutely.
work around that.
And that's very interesting. We often complain about red tape and policies in social work, yet most of us are not willing to be at the table to write them. So we have other folks who are not doing the work telling us the confines of what we can and cannot do as social workers. That makes no sense. I would not want an engineer or a doctor or a political scientist come into my agency and telling me how to interview clients. I need someone in social work developing policies about eligibility, how to do assessments, and how to do discharge. Absolutely. So we have to get interested because our lifeline depends on it. So in terms of policy, if we're going to complain about policies and lack of efforts to get rid of human trafficking, we have to look at the laws regarding human trafficking. And when did we, the state of Ohio, get our first human trafficking law? When did we get our first human trafficking law in the state of Ohio? Yes. 11. It just went into effect. They voted on 2010. It went into effect 2011. We just got it. When did the country get its federal legislation on human trafficking? When was that as a country? 2000. This is recent stuff here. This is recent stuff. We're just now doing something. And one thing about policy laws, I always say, they're only as good as if they are enforced and implemented. You can write these beautiful laws all the time, legislation all the time, but if there's no one enforcing them, they mean nothing. So you have to kind of put your money behind your mouth behind your money. Or how's that?
Yeah,
that's it. Got it. Yes, thank you. Yes, you have to do them both. Absolutely. Thank you. What's your name again? I forget. Your name again? Mamuso, that's right. Okay. Let's talk for a minute about how they define human trafficking. And actually, you'll see this definition in a minute here in terms of our policy and what it looks like. And there's some pretty important words there. You see the word recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, trading, and receipt. So that covers lots of different aspects and dimensions of human trafficking. It's not just the person forcing them. It is all the other stakeholders that are also part of that process. So I'm really glad to see how expensive it is. It says within and across national borders. That's also a misnomer. A lot of folks think of human trafficking as actually moving people between places. Are you aware you can be in Columbus, Ohio, and be from Columbus, Ohio, and still be trafficked? You can, absolutely. Absolutely. And so it's really important to keep that in mind, talking about threats, force, coercion, fraud, abduction, deception, abuse of power, exploitation. All of those things play a huge role in how human trafficking is successful. You put all these things together, yeah, I can see how the system is working its hand. Absolutely. So you're talking about, and the one we talk about a lot is prostitution and other forms of sexual exploitation. One of the great things that this country has done with our particular legislation, it says that if you're less than 18 and you're in commercial sex acts, you are being trafficked. That's new. That is new to say as a blanket statement, if you're less than 18, you do not have the ability or the capacity to decide to be a prostitute, which is wonderful. Now, the paper says that. Enforcement, do you think we're still arresting teenagers and saying they're prostitutes? All of the time. Well, it doesn't make sense. The federal policy says if you're less than 18 and you're doing this, you're a victim. How can it be then at the state level? Each state decides their own ways to approach this. How can it be then that we're still arresting girls as prostitutes and charging them with self-prostitution? How can that be? Yes.
Because with each state, like the kind of mindset on the matter changes. Because wasn't the one in 2010, that's the one that changed it so that they can't be charged that the
2008.
Oh, 2008, the
yeah.
one for Ohio.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Our law.
That one,
our law.
Yeah, our
law.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
That changed so that they can no longer be arrested, but the actual, wasn't it with the perpetrators, the ones that do it are the ones being arrested?
That's what's supposed to happen.
That's what's supposed to happen.
Yes.
So in states, you get all these different mindsets on the matter, and then they vote according to what they think and not what's actually going on.
Absolutely. In fact, there's been some research done where they've interviewed judges, law enforcement officers, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and kind of asked them about the law, how they interpret it. The most surprising finding was most had never heard of it. And they're in a position to enforce it. We have a problem here. We have a problem. I was in the United Kingdom giving a presentation on child trafficking in the United States, and I was talking about the lunacy of arresting kids as child prostitutes in the United States with our law. And there was an officer in the audience. He said, "What do you expect us to do? These kids are, they have drugs on them, they're packing would have guns on them, they have fake IDs, and you know what, and that's how it works. So they may not get them on prostitution, they get them on drug trafficking, weaponry, so that's how it works. This is how the perpetrators work. They know that when they get caught, they're going to be the source of observation and magnification, not the perpetrator, because they're the ones they intentionally put the goods on. So they may not necessarily get them on trafficking. And what the trafficking law states, however, that if you commit crimes in the line of being trafficked, you're supposed to be pardoned or recused. They're not doing it. Yes?
Isn't that, I think, another crucial reason we need to get social workers in policy, because we have actually, there's a huge number of people that are like crim majors, which
Yes.
when you, I don't know, I've had discussion with like other like people that are in criminology, they have a whole different mindset than a social worker.
Yes.
But yet we're supposed to collaborate with them. So I think it's important that, you know, we live in a society where it used to be innocent until proven guilty, but it's not guilty until.
Well said.
So, I mean.
Well said. I love your point. We're not talking to each other. We're not. And that's how folks fall through the cracks. Social workers talk a lot about being interested in dealing with human trafficking. We do a lot. We talk a lot. A lot. Really a lot. A lot. I don't know how else to say it, but what are we actually doing about it? You're right, we're not talking about law enforcement or criminology. We're not. We're just totally separate as wanting to do good people, not really putting a dent in it, not collaborating with others about how to really address the issue. I think it should be standard procedure that when a child is arrested for prostitution, they automatically redirect her to a children's services department across the country. That would nip it in the bud. Hasn't happened. Not yet. Working on it, dreaming about it. There's some work to be done. Some work to be done, absolutely. So the crime in Ghana is up to 5 years. There was a real big case in Ghana just about 2 years ago where they busted a ring of traffickers who had lots of Asian women in Ghana who were being trafficked. So there hasn't been many cases yet. Like in the United States, this act, its first version went into effect in 2000. Since 2000, it's been about 367 convictions in the last 12 years. Since 2000, only 300 some convictions since 2000. But if you know about the criminal justice system, imagine this. You saw someone commit a crime. Do you go to court just once and send them away and it's over with? Do you go to court several times? Numerous times. Are you escorted from your car to the front door of the court system? Probably not. So if someone has just prostituted me, trafficked me, I've seen them abuse others, threaten to kill me, hit me, hurt me, harm me, do you think I'm going to show up for court? Ain't going to happen. Ain't going to happen. And you cannot convict these guys without witnesses. And they are afraid for their lives and their family members' lives. So it's hard to convict them even when they're caught, because people have to testify. One thing I say to people all the time who are listening to me about criminal justice and social work is that, like children who are victims of domestic violence and abuse, they go down to children's hospital, they go behind a closed screen room, they have someone interview them once, and it's recorded, and that's it, and they're done. They don't have to show up in court, they say their story just once. We should have that same practice in place for human trafficking victims. There's no way I'm going to show up in court. Because he just told me if I can't be there because I'm locked up right now, I have 50 guys waiting for you outside. I'm not going to show up either. So we need more protective measures in place to really support people who want to get rid of these individuals. Absolutely. Well, how does it look like in Ghana? How does it look like? Let's take a look. Again, the kids. This is amazing, this whole boat thing. And you have to see these boats for yourself up close. Stable, great boats. Yeah, they're made of nice firm trees, but they're known to sink. I mean, they're known to be caught up in some winds and turned over and people drowned. I mean, this is very dangerous work. They can be out to shore for 3 days, 3 months, or 3 weeks. They can be out there for long periods of time with little food and resources at the mercy of nature in terms of doing this work. And the little girls on the bottom, these are little girls. And throughout all of Ghana, little girls have to cut their hair off. It's compulsory to have their hair cut like very short hairstyles. These little girls are breaking rocks down there with a hammer all day long. They're breaking rocks with a hammer all day long. It's probably saying, why are they doing that? This is how they're building their materials to build houses, to build buildings. They need to mix the rock with the sand, and they need these rocks broken up. Here we have machines that do this kind of stuff for us, absolutely. A lot of things in Ghana are really still made manually, which will kind of explain why there's so many folks who are trafficked. The manual labor, the demand is high, very high. And you look at these little girls up close, their arms, their hands are all cut up, scratched up and scarred up. Keloids everywhere, their legs, their feet, their knees, all permanently scarred from breaking rocks popping out, cutting their skin. And they do this for hours, all day. It's amazing when you see it. I first thought maybe they were just playing in some rocks. I started to investigate a little bit more, like, what are you all doing? They're busting rocks, literally all day long. And yes, you need some labor for that, some pretty cheap labor or free labor. Let's look a little bit between the boys and the girls. In terms of labor trafficking there, the street hawking out there is very, very popular. There's street hawking among the boys and the girls out there. Agriculture, that's a real big piece of what they do in Ghana. You need folks to do that to command the area. But the whole forced begging. Do you know what forced begging looks like? Have you seen it before? Have you heard it before? The forced begging. In Ghana in particular, there's a lot of kids there from Niger. Some folks call the word Niger, but it's called Niger. The very first time I saw a forced beggar, it scared me almost to death, literally. And that may sound very privileged, but let me tell you how it looks, because the kids from Niger in particular, they're very small kids who are used to do this here. And they'll let you into someone, literally let you into you, and they will not let go. And the first time a child did this for me, the child was very little and it was the dirtiest kid I've ever seen in my life. I don't know how else to say it. The child was so dirty, the entire child was brown. The hair was brown, it was a really long curly hair to the shoulder. It was brown with dirt. The face was brown with dirt. The clothes were brown with dirt. The feet, everything was just brown with dirt. And I had not seen a child that dirty before in my life. And it actually, when the boy grabbed my hand, I didn't know what it was, to be honest. And I looked down, was a little child there. And we're looking around, well, where's your mom? And the kid was just kept doing this to me, like, feed him. And I'm thinking, well, I've been giving money away all day. I had nothing left on me, to be honest, nothing left on me. But he wanted something. And one of the Ghanaians, saw my response to this child, first being afraid, then being concerned, they said, look over there. And you're right. I looked way down the road over there. I can see a mother and a father sitting on the side of the road, commanding the kids who to go to, telling the kids who to go to. And this is their life, to be in Ghana. I assume they were their mothers. It kind of looked like they were the same people. It could have been traffickers. I don't know who they were. But they were forcing the kids to beg all day long. And every single trip, I saw the same thing over and over again. These very, very poorly kept kids begging all day, and let you into complete strangers. And they'll walk with you as far as you'll walk. They'll walk as far as you walk. I mean, how safe is that? You get someone who's a little psychotic, that child can be injured or killed. But that's the way it happens. Very common, forced begging. Same-sex tours. This is a really one that doesn't go very well in Ghana. There are sex tours. Are you all aware there are sex tours all around? If you go online right here in the United States, go online, look up sex tours, you'll find somewhere to go. Africa and Southeast Asia in particular. That's right here on Google, set up by some Americans, some foreigners, that we can all access today if we wanted to. If you wanted to find someone to have sex with in a different country of the same sex or opposite sex, easily find it. And these websites are alive and well and running right here in the United States. And you know this country has the ability to cut down, shut down anything at a moment's notice. Not done. Not done. Not done. So these are some I'll show you an example of a same-sex individual that was nearly beaten to death after it was disclosed. Then domestic servitude was very common. Again, the girls. And the prostitution, I'll show you some of that as well. Also very common, very dangerous. Have you heard anyone say about, you probably have heard this before, that there are folks who really believe in parts of Ghana that if you have sex with the virgin, it'll get rid of your HIV/AIDS. That's pretty common in Southeast Asia as well. Some folks really believe that if you have sex with the virgin, you'll get rid of your HIV/AIDS. Incredible. So the younger, the better. The younger, the better. Pretty common, actually, and it's actually very heartbreaking. Any questions so far? Questions so far? Let's go to how it looks a little bit. Roamers versus Cedars. Ellen Papole went there and did this, the only survey project that I know on women who were in prostitution and trafficking, and she called them two different names, the Roamers and the Cedars. And when I talked to you all about that interracial dating, those couples earlier, those were the roamers I seen, women who actually roam around different parts of Ghana, hanging around nice hotels and nice restaurants. Those are the roamers. What would we probably equate that to in the United States? What kind of women in the commercial sex industry we probably equate roamers to? Women around nice hotels, nice restaurants. Escorts. Yeah, these aren't quite escorts because they're walking. They're not in cars, they're walking. I mean, but yes, this would probably be comparable. And what they'll tell you is they first desired Westerners and then Americans. Westerners have more money, they assume, followed by Americans and then Ghanaians last, or the Africans last. That's the hierarchy in which they prefer customers. Then you have the Cedars. Kind of think of brothel workers. Not always as young, or, well, they could be young, but not as desirable as the so-called roamers, so are very visible. And I'll show you there are differences in the dress in a minute to make my point here. And then the sex slaves, those that are unfortunately given to Turcosi priests. These two girls, this is their wedding day. Do they look like happy brides to you? This is their wedding day. These are these little girls' wedding day. They're about to marry a priest. The same priest, by the way. They're about to marry a priest for their family's sins or debts. Don't look very happy, do they? Because these girls know what their future holds for them. Everyone knows the customs, they know the rituals, they know the traditions, and what happens when you are a child bride in this particular fetish tribe. Everyone knows. They don't look very happy at all. Very common, but the government says is trying to stop it. Everyone knows where the Trokosi priests are. We know where they live, what region of the country they are. If the government really, really wanted to stop it, they could stop it. Not happening. Talking about other women who are brought to the country for illegal sex labor, and then this whole same-sex thing. As you all are very aware, in some countries you can get killed for being out. And in Ghana too, there was a man recently, I was there my last trip, there were boards everywhere of a man who had engaged in same-sex pornography. You don't find much pornography in Ghana, in my opinion. I haven't seen much of it. But they had made a videotape that was pretty widespread, and there was a wanted, dead or alive sign all over the country for this man. They were particularly offended because he had sex with another man. Pornography was bad in the South, but it was two men. That was the worst offense. This young man right here, and this is a way to make money. It's true, these foreigners would travel near and far, in this case very far, to get boys to have sex with them. And you'll see the boys following these, oftentimes, white foreigners all over the hotels. They're at the swimming pools, they're at the restaurants. And you may think initially, oh, he's going to adopt him. Oh, what great, yeah, exactly. You think, what, this great Samaritan. He's not adopting him. This boy is going to be out on the prowl for this man the whole time he's in the country. This young man right here was having sex with the foreigners. And he was, as you can see, he has on a female dress. And he had a sock in his other chest area there, and they took it out when they were beating him. He had a wig on. And he was actually, before this happened, you see his hairs all over his head now, he was dressed like a girl. And the person who he was with actually thought it was a girl. And I guess he got caught leaving the hotel. And the villagers are all around him. They're laughing, they're staring. They were going to beat him to death. They said no. They did obviously pull his wig off, pull the sock off of him, beat him up, kicked him, things of that nature. But more than anything else, they wanted to humiliate him and make an example out of him. And going to jail in Ghana is not a good thing. You know, here you get, 3 square meals, you get housing. Over there, your family has to pay for your meals. So if they don't bring you any meals, you do without. So it's harsh to be in jail in Ghana. They thought that would be a better punishment for him, to go to jail, to let him live. So he was one of the lucky ones, so to speak. But they were all behind him, taking pictures and laughing at him, and made him stand there to pose for the camera. He was so humiliated. And I personally believe that if kids are doing this in Ghana, in a country that's very anti-gay and lesbian, they're desperate. They are desperate for some type of income. Never mind that. They were not very forgiving of him. Not very forgiving at all. But I'm glad to see he was at least alive. But jail will be hard for him. Jail will be very hard for him. Any questions so far? Okay. All right, let's talk about these Romans. I want to show you some pictures here to give you an idea of what I'm talking about in terms of how they look. This kind of stuff, you see a lot in America. Mini skirts, halters, you see the tattoos on people's back up here, breasts. This is pretty common all over America. Wouldn't you say? Will these outfits kind of make you take a second look? Not that much, because this is pretty common. I see this kind of stuff all the time in America. In Ghana, you hardly ever see this. You really see, although breastfeeding is very common, the breast is considered to be part of the norm of the culture. You pull it out and feed the baby, it's very different. But to actually show it in an outfit, you don't see all this. All the skin, mini skirts, high heels, it is not practical to walk around all that cement and all those distances and sand high heels. So someone has on high heels, maybe going to church or a wedding, yes, maybe a funeral, maybe. But in general, this kind of stuff is out of character. So when you see it, you can almost assume something's going on. And every time I saw women who were with white foreigners, Americans or Europeans, this is how they were dressed. It was a telltale sign. And even these beautiful braids, this is very common. Wearing braids is very common. The long hair is very common. But when you mix the long hair, when you see a lot of that in Ghana, by the way, a lot of weaves and extensions, coupled with the body parts being shown, the mini skirts, the high heels, and to be with a foreigner, you kind of know what's going on. So Romers kind of stand out. They stand out in a very big way. Usually young, beautiful, attractive women. They do a lot of walking and a lot of hawking, so to speak, in terms of getting attention. I can remember several instances where I saw this actually take place. And one in particular I'll never forget, because I was in a very nice hotel. And I went into this very small bathroom I was going to, but it was too crowded. And these beautiful women were in there, probably 17, 16 years old, maybe 18. Beautiful, strikingly beautiful, look like models. They all came out the bathroom at the very same time, and they lined up in front of the room. a bar, I guess it was called, bar restaurant. And the men chose them one at a time in public. They didn't even try to be discreet. They were just picked off one at a time to get from the hotel restaurant to their rooms. Beautiful, striking, model-like women. And this was their thing. They were meeting these foreigners in these hotels and lining up and being chosen like something off a shelf in a grocery store. Shocking, 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 shocking. Mini skirts, long hair. They call these men their dates, their clients, hobbyists, or mongers. Very interesting. And I call them a cross between a highly paid escort worker and a streetwalker. They're kind of like a cross. Because you don't find escort workers walking in the streets. That's not how it works in America. I mean, they're in the finest hotels, finest planes, and finest trips. These women are out walking, and they're picking up quite a few customers because they look very different, very attractive, and very different. Very attractive and very different, what you'll see among the other beautiful women in Ghana. Okay, roamers. Another piece here, another thing you'll see as well. This is a true story as well. Let me show you some pictures here. And this is how things kind of obvious. You see the mixed match in the people here. I was at a home, standing in a family's home, and in Ghana, the military is kind of like an upper level of the police. The police is somewhat feared, but the military, be very afraid. No one challenges the military. Ghana is a peaceful country, a restful country, and so the military is called in when there's a bank robber or some type of crime going on. So people don't challenge the military. I'm at this home, and 4 jeeps of military men descended the home. I'm thinking, I'm going to die in Africa. I'm going to die in Africa. I'm freaking out, freaking out. You know why they were there? It was a conference going on, a Pan-African conference. There were dignitaries from all over Africa and Ghana, and they were picking up prostitutes to take to these dignitaries. And the house I was staying in had many villages behind it. They were going to the house behind where I was to pick her up personally for dignitaries. This was the military for the country was picking up prostitutes for dignitaries. I couldn't believe it. And that's why I said the government's part of this here. So who am I, an American, to come in with a lowly visa, visitor tourist visa, and try to do something? If the military is part of this, I'm not going to challenge them. Absolutely not. And the military is commissioned by the president and other authorities. I'm not going there. I don't want to die in Africa. Absolutely not. And it's the true story. And you'll see, in that case, it was Africans who they were there being picked up for. But you'll see a lot of this here, the young African Ghanaian woman with a white tourist. It stands out. It's true, there are some couples in Ghana who are mixed, but it's very rare. And if you are mixed, it's usually around the same age typically. You don't usually see an 18, 19-year-old with some 40, 50, 70-year-old man. You don't see a lot of that. So it just stands out automatically. And you'll see this woman typically with this man either all night or all weekend or the whole trip. It's kind of hang out the whole trip. So when they travel abroad for these trips they're on, business or sex tours, they have the delight of pleasure and freedom to be with the same person they like the entire time. This is how it works. And it is very clear to anyone watching this, the hotels, people in charge, that this is happening. And no one does anything because we want people to stay in hotels, here and abroad. It's a business thing. And even this dress, this stands out. I rarely wear shorts. You rarely see a woman with shorts on in Ghana. Women don't typically wear shorts. So this shorts alone would stand out, let alone short ones. Let alone short ones. Stands out, pretty obvious what they're doing. Very common, the same person for several days to several hours. And then this little right here, this lady right here is only a teenager actually. She's a teenager. Woman over here is actually a teenager because a lot of the Asians also, some, not a lot, but enough, are also brought to Ghana as well. So it happens, absolutely. Any questions so far? Yes.
I was wondering how these people, since they stand out so much, how did the other people in their community view them? Like what kind of stigma?
Woo, great question. Nasty stares. My thought when I see this happening, especially in the nice hotels and the restaurants, don't you feel uncomfortable? I know even when I was there the very first time, we were in a hotel, me and 5 other students were at the table. A woman came in who was clearly, you know, working as a prostitute and being trafficked. And she had a white foreigner with her from Germany, I believe it's excellent, from Germany. And my students alone from America were staring and whispering. I could tell she was looking very uncomfortable. Then even the Ghanaians start to whisper. If to me appeared she wanted to fall through her chair. She looked so uncomfortable. And I've been in many restaurants where I've seen women come in. They come in very confident, looking very pretty, but the stares, the gawks, the whispers, it makes them look very uncomfortable. They're doing it, it's a way of living. They have nice things, they have nails, they have hair, and they have clothing, but I know the pressure is there. And a lot of the folks who I see are not from that area. So it helps a little bit to know that maybe your family is 5 hours away. They don't actually see you. So the guys who see you aren't your people. So it kind of helps a little bit. But still the pressure's there. Because Ghanaians really do, she's just a prostitute. Just, they'll say it out loud, within ear reach. They will say that loud, and she's sitting there. There have been times, one of the very hours as well, is that you'll see, this is a true story, I've seen many times a woman, 2 or 3 to 1 man, come to these nice restaurants where he would eat shrimp, steak, lobster, and they'll eat nothing. They'll wait till he's done. They'll sit there, he won't even feed them. That looks suspicious anyway. You're at a restaurant, the man is eating, the women aren't eating. They're just waiting till he's done so they can go about their business. It stands out. It really does stand out. Absolutely. So any other questions about what we talked about so far? Okay, we keep going here. The Cedars, wow. Right here, look at these women right here. This is a real sting, an operation. These women were arrested. This is a very interesting story too about these women. These women are considered to be the Cedars. As you can see their attire, it's very different, isn't it? Very different attire. It's not dressy, it's not revealing, just plain old clothes, plain old westernized clothes. Nothing fancy at all, and they are truly disgraced. They are truly disgraced by being busted in this raid. And the journalists who wrote this story up, I believe they were honorable men. They were going undercover, and a lot of things in Ghana is undercover when this kind of things happen. Undercover, several visits. When the military, not the police, but the military showed up and found the journalists with these women, they too were beaten mercilessly, beaten, and they were trying to pull their IDs out, but they were still beating them. But when they finally got an ID out and verified they were there undercover, they got some mercy, but they were at this point bloody and beaten. Because you don't want to be caught in a raid in Ghana. Although the government knows it's happening, they do want to make an example out of raids because it costs money and time to do raids, as they do in the United States. And so these women were photographed, they're so ashamed, they're so humiliated, they're going to be arrested. They're going to be arrested. Victims or not, they're going to be arrested. But look at these girls over here. And you'll see a lot of these girls. These girls are still, some aren't even in puberty yet. And you'll see a lot of this. I went to a home for girls who had given their babies up. It was just a room about twice this size, and there were like square pieces of cloth on the floor. These were the babies of these girls, just on the floor. A whole room of them, because they often get pregnant. Men don't want to use condoms, here or there. Some things just don't change. And so these girls get pregnant, and they had all these babies just on the floor. It was almost like a warehouse. And I said to the workers, how do you manage all these babies? They're just on these little, she said, we do what we can do. They get pregnant, they give the babies up, they have to go work, yes.
Do you happen to know the statistics on how many of them first come out with some type of STD or HIV?
I cannot tell you that.
Because I would think that they probably wouldn't be able to receive the antiretroviral drugs that keep their babies from receiving it.
That's a good question. Probably high in some populations. I know that the more power and authority you have, maybe as the Romans, you can assert the use of condoms more so. With these girls, no. You can even get more money if you don't use condoms. They give you $1 more, $2 more. Ooh, I know, not that much. But even when I went to the hotel with my students that first trip in particular, when we got there, we were waiting for our rooms, and when 2 of my student pairs went to their rooms, there were condoms everywhere. The room was strewn with condoms. So someone was using them, and when we complained to their front desk, they actually admitted there were some prostitutes, the word they used, in the room with some foreigners. So someone was using condoms. They left plenty of evidence behind. I mean, this all is almost appears as if there were rooms of men or women in the rooms. Groups of them in one room at a time, because there were so many condoms all over the place. So I think you can probably demand that usage when you have more power and authority. These women and girls, no, they're barely making it. And if you will go into this village in a Kwame Nkrumah Circle area, they're literally standing against trees and buildings, and like we're in the class right now, that many, in that proximity, that close, waiting for customers. Close, just waiting. Come. I mean, really, really close together, just waiting to get a customer. And the money isn't that great. I don't think I had that slide with the money on. It's not that great at all. And do you all find it surprising that many former victims end up becoming perpetrators? How does that happen? You know what you had to endure, your suffering, your trials, your tribulations. How is it possible that you can become a perpetrator when you were once a victim? Yes. This is their life. They've always done it. They know the ins and outs. And now they're in a position of a little more power and authority. Now they can oppress someone else. It's true. Very common, actually. Yes?
The women that you mentioned before, like the more escort.
The roamers.
The roamers, do they kind of like age out into being the cedars?
It's beneath them.
Oh, really?
It's a great question.
Completely different groups.
It's beneath them. Because many of them, I've talked to many of them actually, and they'll say it's temporary. They want some money for college, for school, some material things. No, they'll just age out and maybe become an entrepreneur. This is beneath them, let me assure you. They want to make some real money for each exchange. Yes?
You find that the roamers are actually more in line with getting tested regularly since they have
Great question. Great question. Great question. Absolutely not. Did you know one of the most frightening things to do in Ghana is to go get an HIV test? People are petrified of getting tested. So absolutely not. People are afraid. Some will go get tested, but won't come back for the results. They're too afraid of the possibility they may have it. There are so many circumstantial deaths in Ghana of young people. Oh, he had a flu, she had a pneumonia. You hear that all the time. Just uninformed and not tested. Great question. Nope. Yes?
How willing were these people to talk to you, like when you had to ask them questions?
They thought I was going to give them some money, so very willing, actually. I hate to say it, but it's true. And I did give folks money. I figured I was taking away their time from working. I had to give them something. But yeah, they know if you're going to talk to them to give them something. Very willing, actually. And they would not identify themselves as being prostitutes, though. They're working women, business women. Had to hustle. Pardon me?
Is that what they said?
Mm-hmm. Entrepreneurs. You know, in Ghana, that's what it's about. Many developed countries to be entrepreneurs, your own business. This was their business. This was their business. Entrepreneurs. These little girls, however, just cool that some didn't even speak the language. They may have been from a different region, had a different dialect, a different tribe. They're truly at the mercy of those around them. Truly at the mercy of those around them. Talk a little bit about policy. President Barack Obama went there, was it last year, year before last? I don't know. It was a real big to-do. There were signs all over the country of their president and our president coming together in terms of trafficking. Let's look a little bit. This language is what you saw earlier about sex trafficking and human trafficking in terms of labor trafficking of their act versus ours. It's pretty similar. The language is almost the same. Recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision. I mean, it's pretty much the same, except we have this caveat here that says for the first time in the country, history of this country, that you're less than 18. As I said to you all earlier, a lot of people don't know that. Because we define what's a minor differently between states. What's a minor? Although the federal piece does say less than 18, some states know, they say it's 16, not a minor anymore, 17, so it varies. So it's a contradiction, and that's a problem, a big, big problem. Another piece here. Again, labor trafficking, huge, huge problem. United States, have you all noticed how many things we use and wear that are from China? Is that a coincidence? It really isn't. We have a problem here, people. We do. We have a huge problem with labor trafficking, and that's why I say statistically the numbers would show there are more people being labored because of our consumption. We are the chief consumers of the universe right here in the United States. I hate to put it that way. We're the chief consumers of the universe, and we need someone to do these things. And the truth is, if you know anything about economics and just profit, you can still earn quite a bit of money without using slaves. You know, people want to tell us that if we don't use these slaves in Africa and Asia, we can sell you a pair of jeans for $20 instead of $100. Truth is, you still can keep it around $20, $25, and pay people living wages. But if people want enough money for profit for themselves and their kids and their kids' kids and their kids' kids and their kids' kids' kids, billionaires. And that's where the problem lies. The amount of profit that people are trying to usurp from consumers. Absolutely. It's the problem. So we do have this legislation that a lot of people know nothing about, which is crazy. Yes.
What can we actually do about that with, like, isn't there sort of a dilemma with that? Because if we did try to, because I know there was a big surge in sending jobs out after NAFTA was signed out, but if we tried to pull all these jobs back, even if we could, you take away millions of people's earnings and put them in a position where they could die, starve. I mean, so that's a big dilemma that, how do you approach that?
That's a great question. We hear that a lot. If you pull your support from companies that use slaves, well, these folks are going to be forced out of work, livelihood, basic necessities. And the truth is, you may hurt some people temporarily, but in the long run, the benefit exceeds the disadvantages. And you're right, some people will hurt temporarily, but you have to start somewhere. You're right, you're absolutely correct. And the truth is, unfortunately, in this country in particular, so many of our things are made abroad. So many of them are made abroad. It's hard to buy anything that even in some part was not produced by some slave somewhere. You're right, it's very difficult. We have to walk around here butt naked pretty much to avoid that. And that wouldn't be a good sight. So we can't do that in this country. That's not gonna work, it's illegal. But we do have to be more proactive in how we selectively choose. You know, all these little corner stores that are being put out of businesses by these mega stores, really probably, and they make handmade things themselves, they're growing things, sewing things, producing things themselves right in this soil that we could use that we aren't using. We may have to pay a little bit more right now, but in the end, it will even out. So it does require some sacrifices right now in the short term to make a difference in the long term. Great question. Absolutely. The rating. United States, we rate every country, about 175 nations, on what they're doing to get rid of trafficking. The ranks are 1, you're pretty much in compliance, you're doing what you're supposed to do. There's 2, you're not quite there, but you're making some progress. Then there's the tier 2 watch list. You're not in compliance, but you're willing to work on it, and we're gonna watch you work on it. And then tier 3, you're not even trying, you're just trifling. Okay, so we as a country, we're tier 1, of course. Of course we are. Surprise, surprise, we're tier 1. They've promoted Ghana from being a tier 2 watch list to tier 2. What that means is, in terms of prosecution, protection, and prevention, they're making some progress. And these are the 3 prongs in which the government evaluates others. In terms of prosecution, do you have any laws in place, and are you enforcing those laws? We're not one to talk so much, but we are talking quite a bit actually. Prosecution. So Ghana has done something. They have this new legislation in place. That does help. That makes it a felony and 5 years imprisonment. And in Ghana, 5 years may as well be 40 years, because it's rough in Ghana to be in prison. It is rough. So they feel that's pretty fair. In terms of protection, trying to protect people from being trafficked, and once they're out, to protect them as well in terms of safety and security. So they gave them a 2 because there's some increased efforts to identify victims, because they are doing raids. Before this time, there were no raids. So at least they're trying to identify some victims through raids, so they're making some progress. Supportive service, what they're saying is, in terms of you all down the road who help me out, NGOs. What are NGOs? None. Non-governmental, yes. And these NGOs are hard to sustain themselves. They need money, volunteers, support. They need people to come and help. One of our students, you know Hannah Bonacci? If you know Hannah Bonacci? No? Hannah is a sophomore in the college. She went to Ghana through some program out of her own to go to our children's home last summer. Volunteered. She had to pay to get there, pay for her room and board, but she went there and worked for free. She's going back this summer with 10 more students to work for free in an NGO. And this is for kids who are in children's homes. So they need folks to help out. It takes money to pay people. So if you have the means to have your bills paid, taken care of, and a flat to God to help out, it makes a huge difference in making a difference. So NGOs, so what they're saying is the NGOs are not supported. These well-meaning folks, many from abroad, come over to Ghana and other countries and start an NGO. They have to go back and work their jobs. They need some folks to stay behind, to maintain what they're doing, to support. And it takes money to feed these kids, clothe these kids, some money. Get a relative, a sponsor, someone to help you to bring money or send money to an NGO. So they're saying they're not doing enough of that right now. And then prevention. In other words, they're not doing a good job getting out the word about human trafficking. In fact, if you were to average interview 99 people, probably only one may know the word human trafficking. You just don't hear the word. And I think that was the case here too. Just a few years ago, a lot of folks hadn't heard of human trafficking. They heard of prostitution, human trafficking, not so much. So the word really is not out. So how can you begin to address it if you don't even know it exists? Can't do it. So there's some work to be done in terms of getting it out. That's why they're tier two. So they've made some progress. They even have a few task force in place in some of the major cities try to come together, come up with some plans on how to do more raids, how to support NGOs, how to support these kids, these women, in terms of human trafficking.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Are the task forces kind of supported by the U.S. government, or do they have any funding given?
Thank you for thinking that.
Promoted from tier 3 to tier 2?
Good
Is that
point.
like an incentive?
Yes, thank you for bringing that piece up. Yes, the government wants to help. We have the means, obviously, to help. And so we do give countries money to support their efforts. And they have to show that the monies were used and it actually supports their efforts in some kind of way. So there is an incentive to get monies from the government over here to stop human trafficking over there. So yes, you're right. There are incentives, absolutely. All right, well, who are the targets of the law? Just want to give you a quick scenario, the targets of the law. And that's the part I really struggle with, because over here we have a real problem with domestic minors and sex trafficking. And I think, unfortunately, we kind of see girls caught up in it as being fast, hard-headed, and grown. And so we don't put a lot of effort into these so-called fast girls of the United States. We do almost nothing as a country to really confront domestic minors and sex trafficking. Very little. The little efforts that we do put forth are really targeted towards foreigners, which obviously is a very important area to put money towards. Any thoughts can you think of any reasons why the United States would focus on foreigners in terms of human trafficking, which is actually a very important area? Why would they primarily focus on foreigners, you think, versus citizens? Yes, Crystal.
To kind of like not put the land on the U.S. as having people who are actual U.S. citizens being trafficked within their own country. Because that's something that would be really shameful, instead of saying, oh, it's people from other countries bringing these people in to people here who want them. But, you know, and also it kind of shatters the illusion that, oh, life in America is like everyone's wealthy and everyone has money, because there obviously are people who are desperate enough to be trafficked in this country. I
think you're right. I think that's a huge piece of it, how it looks, the politics of it. I agree, Crystal. Yes, you wanted to add.
I think it might be cheaper just to deport these people than actually prosecute somebody here.
Absolutely. We are going to send some folks back home. And one of the caveats in terms of that visa, changing your status here as undocumented to legal, you have to agree to testify. And if you don't, you're going back home. Keep in mind, some of these folks were brought there from people they know. Husbands, neighbor people, they know their entire families. So even if they can't kill you because you're in protective custody, which is very unusual and rare, they know your entire family. They can make one call and get the whole family obliterated. So they aren't going to cooperate, you're right. So what we do, we send them back home. You're right, it's true. We have a problem here. We have a problem here. We do focus on foreigners and we expect them to cooperate. And keep in mind, many of us are probably afraid of foreign prisons as well, foreign police. They too are afraid of our foreign police. So they don't want to do anything to get in trouble. They're afraid, they're petrified. Of course they aren't going to cooperate. And the perpetrator has already promised them that if you cooperate, all they're going to do is put you in jail anyway. And so they're afraid. They've been brainwashed of all these terrible things about the system. You're right, not successful. We can't make a lot of headway because we're kind of spinning our wheels in the whole movement, even at the governmental level. American teenagers, we have the piece there, the caveat says if you're less than 18, you're not a perpetrator, you're really a victim, but folks don't know about it. So that's still a problem. It is still a problem. Adults, men and women. The one area that we tend to hear a little bit about with trafficking is when politicians try to get appointed. It comes out, he or she had a nanny. Then we'll talk about it as a nanny, undocumented. We don't really use the word human trafficking, but that's about the case or the scenario when we do talk about it, is when these politicians want to get promoted or advance in their careers, and then it comes out. And we don't say much about anything else. We don't say much about any other forms of labor trafficking in this country. So that's, yes, Crystal.
Yeah, like, especially like with our food, there's a ton of labor trafficking here. I think there's like one thing, like they're trying to make Kroger force them to pay just like 1 penny more.
For tomatoes.
For tomatoes, and they're like having a big problem. They've been able to get other organizations to do it, but like there's like an organization that's trying to advocate for workers.
Immokalee.
Yeah, Immokalee, workers.
Absolutely.
And like, the majority of our food is probably coming from people who are involved in labor trafficking.
It's true. I understand recently that Whole Foods, they signed on, sure did. Burger King, Subway, and Taco Bell were some of the recent ones that signed on saying we're going to pay tomato pickers 1 cent more per tomato. We're going to pay them a little bit more. Kroger is still in holdout. It is still a holdout, refused to do it. Public grocery stores in the southern part of the country, still a holdout, would not pay tomato pickers 1 more cent per tomato. And that makes a difference. We know that Walmart has been guilty of this for years, just guilty of just using slaves in how they produce and do their work, sell their products. So we know, and then we know some of the a lot of designer companies, almost all of them are guilty of this. I mean, so it's really difficult. One thing that people would say in the so-called labor market is that if you go to secondhand stores, you're kind of helping in the fight. If you like designer things, but you buy from secondhand stores, you're kind of helping out the cause. Do you know how? You like designer stuff. You don't want to be part of it directly of the whole labor trafficking. So go to secondhand stores. How does that kind of help indirectly? Because actually it does. Crystal?
Because you're not contributing to like more money. You're not contributing to them thinking, okay, there's a desire for a lot of these products, which contributes to more trafficking.
Absolutely. It's been purchased once at the full price. Instead of buying more at the full price, go and get something for pennies on the dollar. So eventually it will bring the market down. Eventually, if more folks recycled, so to speak, if you have this desire for designer stuff, for example. So it actually does help to bring down the demand for it. Because the demand is high, continue to do it. Absolutely. Okay, and then Ghana, they tend to focus on mainly Ghanaians and other Africans, obviously, because in Ghana, mainly everyone in Ghana are Africans, almost everyone. There are some other people there, but mainly Ghanaians. Children, labor trafficking, especially in fisheries. Yeah, this is the one topic in Ghana. You rarely hear about trafficking and sex work in Ghana. You rarely hear about that. The rates are uncommon, but people are recognizing these kids who are not going to school, who are dying prematurely and getting injured very seriously, are slaves. I mean, so there are some people from the United States and parts of Europe who are just taking trips to the Volta region and buying the kids back for their families. They're buying the kids back, and it takes money to buy kids back because the perpetrator, who's not going to be jailed, would say, no, this kid works for me. I paid the mom $30 2 years ago. I'm not giving the kid back. So they may pay for the kid at this point $50. So they may buy the kid back, and they'll try to find family. They don't find family, they'll put them in group homes set aside for rescue children. But they are pleading and going back and forth, buying kids back. So that's something. And these things take money. So if you're not willing to go abroad yourself, there's always legitimate orgs out there you can give money to. And they're even sending high school kids out, more and more of them, on these missionaries to do this kind of work as well, to show them how serious this is, and young folks can make a difference. More and more college students are also doing this. So there's concrete ways to make a difference. Me going into the, how can you help? And before I show you 3 slides on how you can help, Do you have any ideas for me based on what I've shown you about human trafficking and labor trafficking? What do you think you, a college student, maybe on a modest salary, can do to fight the good fight? Any thoughts yourself before I show you some thoughts? What can you do? Do you feel any empowerment today? That you can possibly do something?
Inform others.
Tell others simply it exists. It's a problem. Yes. Crystal?
Like, get involved in any like local organizations or student organizations, like the USAS, which is like United Students Against
Sweatshops. Right here on campus. Right here on campus.
And, you know, just be involved with groups that advocate for these people and work to like end sweatshops.
Absolutely. I know immaculate workers are coming here to Columbus on May 19th, and there are folks who are going to put them in their house, who are going to feed them meals, who are going to transport them around the city. So there are things you can do just one little bit at a time. Write a letter to Kroger, so you're one of the holdouts. Kroger paid the farmers one more penny per tomato. Write letters, send emails. Sure. What else? Any other thoughts before I show you some? How many of you have Facebook? I need some more hands. I know almost all of you. How can you use Facebook to help out?
Like,
Okay.
spread any petitions. There are a lot of petitions for these things. Spread that. Also,
And they're probably real too. You can check them out on Snopes, but they're probably real petitions. Sign them and forward them. It makes a difference.
And also, you can use that as a way to inform people, like the articles about things that are going on.
Absolutely.
If there are any like actual groups, because most group pages and organizations have their own Facebook page.
They do.
So you can follow them and like.
Absolutely. Get the word out. Any other thoughts? What you can do personally? I'll give you some ideas, okay? Become involved in the movement. And I see more and more students that are calling me, talking to me, showing up for things about the movement and learning about what it is. And I always ask students who are new to the movement, they'll say, how can I learn more about it? I always say, go and read the TVPA, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. Read the law for yourself first. It's a little cumbersome in its real form, but they have little abbreviated sheets as well out there. But know the law. Know what you're dealing with first. I think you should always go back to law, default to the law, the policies in place first. Get to know the problem firsthand, and then get to read, go to other sites, established sites that talks about human trafficking, and they'll have concrete idea after concrete idea of what you can do. All right, support agencies. These things take money. These things take money when you want to rescue children, when you want to, those babies we saw on the floor, they need people to actually watch those babies, pick up those babies, change those babies, feed those babies, house those babies. That costs money. And so if you have a contact somewhere you can trust and respect and account for your money, so you can send money abroad every month. $100 can be quite a bit in some countries. I mean, if you have someone you can trust, someone's going on a missionary trip, send supplies, send money with them. If someone says, I want to go, I'm trying to raise $3,000 for my trip, give some money, help find a sponsor. So if you don't want to do the work, give others some money who are willing to do the work. It makes a huge difference. Try to become gainfully employed. A lot of people ask me about, well, what can we do as international social workers? You can do that right here in Columbus, Ohio, international work. But you can also go abroad and do work. If you have a means to sustain yourself, which is really a big piece here, and some college students can, they don't have their student loans kicking in yet, they don't have much debt, you can go abroad and work for pennies on the dollar. They'll pay you something most times, something very little. But you can go and work. They'll love to have you. They'll love to have you for weeks or months, whatever you got, or years. Go find an NGO. They'll pull you right into the door. Let me tell you what you can do. Absolutely. Absolutely. They will welcome you with open arms. Identify NGOs that need your help, physically or financially. Social workers, of course, many of them, they may not even have the word social workers around. They may have called them something else, but they know who you are when they see you. They know you when they see you, and they can definitely use you. Absolutely. Adopt a family or a village. Maybe if you do go abroad and someone comes across that really influenced you, that really impacts you, you can adopt that family or that village. Send them something every month. Ask someone else to send something every month. Because the whole trafficking thing really is about oppression, class, and sex. I mean, the isms. It is about oppression and poverty. That destitution is what lends to many of them being vulnerable to being trafficked. So if we can get someone a means of having consistent income, that will prevent that child, that woman, from being vulnerable to going out there and making ends meet in alternative ways or falling for the trickery and deception that gets them into human trafficking. Just that little extra money. I know in Ghana, the average salary is $60 a month. I'm talking about 40, 50 hours of hard work for $60 a month. Wow. So even if I was to send $100 a month, that would be twice their salary for free versus working 40, 50 hours a week. Amazing. And that's a month. Other things you can do, and I always talk about education in Ghana. These kids are in uniforms, and although the government has officially stated, okay, the girls have to keep their hair cut still. In fact, these little girls are where I stay at in a village in Elmina. This little girl right here, this little boy right here, I know very well. The kids have to wear uniforms. The government says, okay, we're going to allow kids to go to school for free, no more fees, and supply uniforms. Unfortunately, some of the headmasters still want to make some money, so they're still charging for uniforms. So we can adopt a family so the child can indeed still go to school or pay a fee if it's required. That will prevent him or her from being vulnerable to being subjected to trafficking or prostitution, to support that family. And education is the way out. They'll tell you, we see this all the time in America. They really mean it in developing countries. Education is the way out. It truly is the way out. Things you can do. Acknowledge it's a problem, get educated about it. Adopt informally or formally. Support a child's education, pay for it. And our dollars can go a long way in many of these parts of the world. Explore where children are not in school but working. Sometimes even asking a question kind of prompts someone to do something different. Maybe they hadn't thought about it. Even that may prompt someone to do something different if you're abroad. You notice this here. Again, education is critical. In schools, a lot of times we as Americans, I know in particular, and Europeans, we want to go to places and build new schools. A lot of times they don't need new schools. They need support and sustaining what they already have in place. Pay the teachers a real salary, the teachers a real salary. Get some school supplies. You know, just sustain what's already in place. We don't have to always go over there and reinvent the wheel. Sustain what's in place already. That's really important. Yes. And that was my first time when I go to Ghana and build a new school. Well, everywhere I walk is another school. Why would I want to do that? That's just silly. Support what's already in place. Yeah, support what's in place. And then communities, really, really big piece here. Education, in terms of kids. And one thing you'll learn about developing countries, have you all noticed something very similar in many of the businesses with immigrants? That a lot of them start family businesses when they get here. You see it a lot. And all the different foreigners, many start businesses because they're told from a very young age to be an entrepreneur. That's a way of life in developing countries, be entrepreneurs. We have to support that. Support that here, support it there. If you know there's a little restaurant or business here in Columbus, and I can almost guarantee you they're here, they have a business, they're sending money back home. Support their businesses. They're sending money back home. So you want to help out right now in terms of doing something, support a business right here in Columbus, Ohio, so they can send more money home. If you know of a family that you maybe went there on a study abroad, you met a family, and they needed $500 to start up their business. Maybe find a way to gain some money, get some money to help them start a business. And they will sustain it. They will work very hard. I found them to be very diligent and honest people with a lot of integrity. Teaching. A lot of you as social workers, if you go abroad, I'm almost done here, if you go abroad, you'll be surprised how many of us end up in teaching roles as social workers. And that's part of one of our jobs too, is to be an educator. I know students graduating next summer is going to go to Ghana and teach for a few years as a social worker. Because they figure if you have a college degree, you're educated, you can teach. You know English, you can teach. And many of us abroad end up teaching regardless of what our majors are. Because you speak English. So that's a huge way to contribute. Community-wide seminars, yeah, one thing that Ghana is chastised about is not getting the word out. Vans, and in Ghana, when they do want to get the word out about something, oftentimes you'll see vans with a big old microphone or bullhorn announcing something throughout the villages and the cities. So that costs money to put gas in those vans, to put the little stickers outside the van. It costs money. again, about human trafficking. And the last piece here, and this is why I tell some students, if you're a student, this is a great opportunity to get funding to do research. People in the United States love to fund research, and they love to fund it when students are doing it. So you have an opportunity to go abroad, maybe a free plane ticket, some money towards housing, and to pay your subjects, do a thesis at the undergraduate level, at the master's level. Great opportunity to go abroad, to be there, and to get funded. Believe it or not, we don't do that a lot. We don't do it a lot. And so the few of us who do it, we get tons of money. I'm constantly giving money, not because I have a PhD, because I'm doing research. People will fund you if you're doing research. And as a student, you're in the right position to get the funding to go abroad and to do research that really matters for people over there. And just in terms of sustaining themselves, it's just the poverty piece. I mean, the poverty is the driving poverty on one end and greed on the other in terms of push and pull factors. You know, poverty pushes you into trafficking and greed pulls people into trafficking in terms of being perpetrators. So whatever you can do to fight the good fight regarding poverty and human trafficking, do what's best for you. Everybody's not a macro level worker, everybody's not a micro level worker. Find what your niche is. If you're interested in doing this here, sit down and think about something concrete that you can do. One quick example, my closing comment is a 17-year-old went somewhere abroad and saw the tragedy behind human trafficking. He came back, got on his Facebook page, and asked all of his friends to send him $1. All of his friends to send him $1. He raised thousands of dollars in just a few weeks. Thousands of dollars in a few weeks. And then he knew of a church going a missionary back to that country, and he gave them the money in good faith. They would use it, and they did, in good faith, the way it was intended to use. So we all can have resources and people who can really help us fight the good fight. We don't have to do it alone. So a lot of supporters out there. Bill Gates, as you know, is a major philanthropist. He and his wife, Melinda. They can't always go around the world doing all of these things. But they're willing to support you. You're willing to go and do the work. And there are a lot of folks out there who believe in that paradigm as well. Okay? That's it. Thank you all very much. Thank you.